Hey guys, are you looking for a sportsbook that you can trust? Well, look no further than mybookie.ag, where you can get a 50% match on your initial deposit of up to $1,000 when you use promo code DFSArmy. As a bonus, when you use promo code DFSArmy, you also get a free month of DFS Army VIP and DFS Army Beat the Bookie membership. That's a $100 combined value. So we'll help you with your daily fantasy sports and we'll help you with your handicapping. Free when you sign up for mybookie.ag using promo code DFSArmy.
In 2015, an elite DFS Army Commando unit formed to bring high-level DFS strategy to the masses. Today, hated by DFS sharks and lineup sellers alike, they continue their quest to turn dope into DFS pros.
What is up, and welcome to the Taco Tuesday PGA DFS podcast, presented to you by DFSArmy.com. This week we are headed to TPC Sawgrass in Florida for the Players Championship, which is it's not a major, but it pretty much ought to be. It's often called the fifth major. It has the largest money prize pool of any tournament in golf, so it's going to have a field that looks exactly like a major. The best of the best golfers, all vying for their chance at their portion of the $12.5 million prize pool, the biggest prize pool in all of golf, even bumped up from last year, and the winner gets $2.2 million. So it's a tournament that the golfers absolutely want to win, and it's going to be a week you'll want to win on DraftKings and FanDuel, where they have some bumped up contest sizes for the week. Tournament's just bigger than normal, as the field is a lot stronger than normal, and the event itself just a much bigger deal. Ramping up for major season. This event has been taking place in May for quite some time. It used to take place in March, and we're going back to that. It's really nice to have the players back in the Florida swing, so we just get all these Florida contests in a row. I like how they have that set up here, and yeah, it was better before, honestly, than when we would go to like Augusta and then go through the Texas swing and have to circle back to Florida for the players. So I'm really looking forward to this week, and before I get down into breaking down the course here at TPC Sawgrass, just got to let you guys know that at DFSArmy.com, if you sign up today using promo code TACO, that'll really help support the podcast, and you'll get a lifetime 20% off discount, and you'll get access to all of our daily fantasy sports offerings, all sports included in one package for a solid price, and becomes even cheaper with promo code TACO to get you the 20% off. You'll get access to our research station, which I'll be referencing on the pod here, and our domination station lineup optimizer. Of course, all of our different VIP articles and tools for all the different major fantasy sports out there. So DFSArmy.com, promo code TACO. Come check us out. You can check us out using the link in the description, or just go to DFSArmy.com. Okay, so on to TPC Sawgrass. It is a 7,189 yard par 72, and it's got a real wide variety of holes and hole types. But one thing that remains true throughout the entire course, and it's something that we saw in both of the previous weeks as we've started playing in Florida, and that's all the water. There's just so much water in play. You have it on hole 4, hole 5, hole 3, hole 6, hole 7, hole 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, every hole pretty much, especially 17. Everyone knows hole 17. It's not actually every single hole, like some of them it's just, there's water by the tee box or whatever, but for the most part, just water everywhere. And that's one of the major factors contributing to this course raking out the third lowest in par percentage. There are some holes that are quite birdieable, some even eagleable, if that's a word. I don't know if birdieable is a word either, but you do have some really easy holes here, like hole 12, redesigned in 2017 to be a 302-yard drivable par 4 that coughs up birdies at a 43% clip, and even has a 3% eagle rate for a par 4, and it's shorter than almost every other par 4 on the PGA Tour. And you've also got, hole 17, the famous Sawgrass hole 17. It's actually one of the shortest par 3s there is. It's really easy if it wasn't for all the water around it. If it was just covered by grass, it would be like the easiest hole there is. But, that's part of the fun of hole 17. They usually have a live Twitter feed going. They've done that the last few years. I think last year was like in VR or something. But yeah, they'll have just a hole 17 cam, just watching people hit it in there into the island green all day long, and that's always fun. You get a lot of balls in the water there. Each year we see about 30 to 50 balls go in the water. Just really, really, really tough. We've seen some historic breakdowns. A few years ago we saw Russell Knox, who was second at the Players, and then going into 17, just I think he hit it in the water like 3 or 4 times in a row. It just completely destroyed his day, and that's something that's just going to come into play here. So pars are not really that much of a thing here. Even though the scores are kind of on the lower side. Well, not lower, I guess. I mean higher. It's always complicated when it comes to golf talking about like that. The scores are generally higher here than at a normal PGA event, but at the same time, fantasy scoring is kind of up a little bit because of all the birdies and eagles to be had. The par 5s aren't really the toughest. They give up, all 4 of them give up more eagles than an average par 5. So you actually see this tournament rating out pretty well in eagle percentage. Only the Canadian Open, Wyndham Championship, and CIMB Classic last year gave up more eagles than TPC Sawgrass, but you're not going to see many courses at all give up less pars, and double bogeys, triple bogeys especially. That's they're going to come into play with the water, and like I've been saying the last few weeks, when you have water in play, really unpredictable sort of double, triple bogeys just kind of waiting to happen all over the place. It really adds to the collective variance of the course. And when looking at the correlations between year-to-date statistics and fantasy scoring at Sawgrass, just over the last 8 years or so, and comparing that to all of the other courses, actually, pretty much every single statistic in here rates out pretty low, all in the 30s out of 43 measured courses here. The only statistic that rates inside the top 30 would be driving accuracy, 24th out of 41 courses here that we have compared to each other. So really, statistics, strokes gained off the tee, approach, around the green, putting, driving distance, even accuracy, and greens of regulation, they don't really correlate that well with fantasy point scoring, just compared to a normal course. And surprisingly, with how small the greens are here, and the greens are, I think, the third or fourth smallest on tour at only like 4,500 square yards. Year-to-date strokes gained approach, it only correlates 35th best out of 41 courses here. So that's interesting to me. I thought that strokes gained approach would rate out a lot more than at a normal event, but that really wasn't the case. There's just a lot more chaos and variance, and whenever you see the correlations like this be low across the board, it really is indicative of just high variance. So, I've been saying that the last few weeks. It's kind of how the Florida swing goes. It's predictable outside of where it's not. It's really similar to like NASCAR when you go to a track where it's really predictable. Like, it's predictable to guess who will do well. There are just a lot of crashes, and that's sort of how it works here this week at the Players. It's a TPC course, and it's a Pete Dye design, just designed to test a player's overall skill set and not one thing in particular. So that's something we're going to want to just keep in mind as we're picking out golfers here. Really just looking at guys with a good overall skill set. Maybe that's not too dependent on just one aspect, or more importantly, just not struggling majorly with one part of their game. Off the tee stuff won't matter quite as much this week, I think, just because pretty much everyone clubs down. This is one of the holes, or one of the courses with the lowest average driving distance. Guys only hit it 270 to 280 off the tee, and you're usually safe to club down here and just pick a spot where your approach shot is going to be. You have a really good attack angle for your second shot. That's important here. The rough is not very penal. It's actually cut very short. It's also one of the flattest fairways on tour. You might get a little bit of roll there, provided that there's no rain. I've got the greens. They're nice. Fast Bermudas. It's weird. It's like Bermuda green, but it's overseeded with POA. So and a little bit of bent grass as well, but it's primarily Bermuda. Almost as fast as last week on the stimp meter. It should putt a little bit differently with it being a little colder out there in the being in May or March instead of May. It might be a little firmer, out in the summer when the temperatures are a little bit higher up. And putting does come into play here. Not so much just good putters coming in. It's just you really need to be putting the ball pretty darn well in order to have a lot of success here. The stats that lead to direct success, like in the tournament, is you need to be knocking the ball in with some good approach stats, but you can also make up a whole lot just by putting really well. And strokes gained around the green, you just don't want to be struggling in that too much. You're gonna miss more greens than usual just with how small they are, but usually it's not that big of a problem scrambling out of these roughs. But again, like I just said, just really overall skill set, kind of what we're going for here. You want guys who are safer, make the cut a good amount of the time. It's got good form coming in, and just really good composure. I like see guys that do better in strong fields, because this is like the strongest field there is outside of maybe like a WGC event that's more condensed with the best players in the world. But with all the best players being here, it makes the favorite in this entire field 12-1. We see Rory and DJ at that mark right now, 12-1, 11-1. Compare that to a lot of weeks where the guys up top are like 5-1, 6-1, 7-1. It creates kind of just a different sort of feel for this tournament. Every lineup you fill out is going to feel great, just because the best of the best are here. So you've got some really good golfers that are priced down, and on DraftKings especially, they do have some guys that are just priced really inappropriately. I guess they do like to make their pricing really, really soft for bigger events like that. But it is important to remember that this field is so hard. It's going to be a lot harder than the field that a lot of these guys have been facing so far, especially some of the younger guys, or the guys aren't quite as good and haven't been playing things like the WGC. Like if they went to Puerto Rico instead of Mexico, it's a sign there. So yeah, I've got like the splits up for strong field and of course Florida and Georgia courses. So yeah, we're going to be looking at, again, just overall fantasy scoring by the hole types. Could be a little key this week. We've got this course is a little particular with having a lot of long par fours and very, very few medium length par fours, which is the most common hole type. But here, not so much. They've actually got more short par fours than they do medium length par fours. And then you've got the 3 short par 5s and the 1 a longer par 5, but they all are on the easier side. And actually, if you go into the fantasy scoring section of the research station this week, I did add just a section that shows DraftKings versus FanDuel, and just looking at projected raw fantasy scoring per round, just based on the different sites' rules. Based on how guys do on average at different hole types. You can see how which guys perform better on DraftKings compared to FanDuel. And just for example here, just going to show you the guys affected most by the scoring differences here. So the guys that are helped out the most by DraftKings scoring. First on the board, you've got Matt Wallace and Eddie Pepperell. These guys have some lower samples. They're some European Tour guys, but they've both put up some really good numbers on par 5s. And that leads to a lot of the added bonus on DraftKings versus FanDuel. That, and also I'm sure they bogey at a higher clip, which is punished a lot more on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Right after them, you got Phil Mickelson, who I've always used as an example of a DraftKings over FanDuel scoring kind of guy. You also got Brandon Harkins, Grayson Murray. So you're more aggressive sort of golfers. You're guys that are going to birdie and eagle, but also bogey and double bogey. And if you look at the guys helped out most by FanDuel, it's pretty much the exact opposite of that. Jim Furyk, Andrew Putnam, Charles Howell, Ryan Moore, Chris Kirk, Ian Poulter, Francesco Molinari, Billy Horschel. They all have a lot in common. They're all driving accuracy guys. They all are under 300 yards off the tee. I think Molinari's right there with 300 yards off the tee, but not going to be much longer than that. You got your guys that can putt, Moore, Howell, Putnam, Furyk, Billy Horschel, lots of very, very good putters up here. And they all kind of struggle on par 5 scoring, fantasy scoring. But they do, they all seem to succeed just in different areas like, par 4 scoring, par 3 scoring, and stuff like that. So, it's really nice to know if your guys are going to be more of a better play on FanDuel than on DraftKings. It's more FanDuel guys, for an example here, like Patrick Cantlay, great example of a FanDuel guy. Justin Rose as well. And then, when looking at the studs, the other side, John Rahm is one of the guys helped most by a DraftKings scoring. Brooks Koepka, Sergio Garcia. So I'll just help give you an idea of, if you're playing both sites, which site you should have a little bit more exposure to your guys on. Helps with the cross-site hedging, which is a pretty nice strategy out there. I personally like to do some draft.com drafts, and then I really target the guys that are maybe too expensive or just not in a good spot, or especially guys who are going to be really high owned on DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever I intend to play. And then it allows me to get some exposure to those guys without having to eat ownership, and playing the guys who are going to score a little better on FanDuel, playing those guys on FanDuel and playing the better DraftKings scores on DraftKings also helps help spread out the action in the most positive EV way possible. So that's always something cool to check out. So again, just going over what we're looking for this week. Still going to be looking at strokes gained approach and stuff, but we're going to look at it more overall and just really just be looking for weaknesses more than just strengths. if your strength is stroke scanned approach, I guess that's pretty cool. We like Matsuyama this week, but you want to see people. I guess putting can be optional. You don't have to really pick a great putter, but around the stroke scanned around the green, I might not pick guys struggling with that. I mean, I know DraftKings overpriced Cameron Champ this week, but I still probably couldn't get me to play him with how awful he is around the green, because you're going to be scrambling a decent amount here, and especially with people going for the taking riskier shots, like going for the drivable par 4 and things like that. With guys having to take really weird shots to avoid water, and oftentimes in approach shots, guys will miss the green to the right to avoid water on the left and things like that. So I'm not like going heavy on stroke scanned approach or anything. Or stroke scanned around the green or anything like that. But I'm just looking at it a little bit more than usual, just seeing if people struggle. That's really what I want to make sure my guys aren't doing. And the same goes for approach and driving accuracy. You can be a little wayward off the tee and do okay here, but you don't want to be really inaccurate off the tee. I know it's just going to mess up your second shot, and things are just going to go a bit wayward from there. So it's, it is the one thing that rated out at least normally compared to the other stats. So it's just a little bit more important, and distance doesn't really matter much this week. I know there are some par 5s, but they're shorter, and you're clubbing down on a lot of these holes anyway. So getting down into the player field here, you've got a lot of the studs are still priced up like studs, but a lot of the guys I'm talking about, I'm going to talk about everyone 10K and above on DraftKings before going into the VIP section of the podcast for the deep dive into the player pool, which of course you can always gain access to with your DFS Army member subscription at dfsarmy.com, promo code TACO. I'm going to talk about the 10K plus guys on DraftKings, and actually these guys are just going to be a little less valuable overall than the guys in the 8-9K range. It's really where you're going to get a lot of the value, because the difference in odds between some of these guys in the 10K, 11K range are not all that different from some of the guys in the 8K range. Like, say, Tiger Woods, for example, he's, 25 to 1, 24 to 1, and he's $10,500, but you go down to Molinari at $8,600, and he's 22 to 1, just sitting right there. You got Fleetwood also, who by the time it tees off will be like 20 to 1. He's gaining a ton of momentum in the odds books right now. So you got a lot of really underpriced guys, and even down low in the 7K, 6K range, you've got some super obvious plays. The key this week might be just focusing on who is going to be like obviously over-owned, and then trying to find a reason to fade them and just hope they get into trouble. A lot of guys do really well here year after year after year, but no one's really safe. You can ask Russell Knox. No one is safe at this course. That's just sort of the nature of it. Henrik Stenson looked about as safe as you could possibly look going into 2016, and he was riding just a wave of non-stop results here. And then what happens? He shoots like an 8 over on one hole or something and finishes like dead last. So that can happen here. And if there's one play in a range, like for example, like Rafael Cabrera Bello, he's gonna be a guy, or Lucas Glover. These guys, they're just gonna soak up so much ownership. You got to really ask yourself if they are worth playing, and just taking on all this ownership, because when the variance is up, at a course, that usually means that you want to go. Well, not usually. It pretty much always dictates that you should be swerving. You should be taking contrarian stands. You should just avoid ownership. I'm certain that there are going to be a few guys that break 20% in ownership, maybe 30%. I don't know about that, but there are. I really doubt anyone hits 30% this week, just because there are so many plays. It kind of spreads out a little bit, and it would also kind of suck to fade a guy you think might be high owned, but just all of the other plays in the range kind of spread out the ownership, and they end up not being all that high owned. So it's good to be mindful of that. You can play some of the guys that you would figure to be chalkier if there are a lot of great plays around them. The 8K range is a good example of that. But when you go down to like the 7K range or so, I think that's where there are some decent fades to be made and some good pivots out there. So starting off here with Dustin Johnson, who is number 1 on the board, sitting at 12-1, which as I usually start off with the field here, you just like to look at what odds value the guys up top have. Like I'd mentioned, you usually want to see it at 5-1, 6-1, 7-1, but you're gonna pay like 11,400, 12,300 on FanDuel for a guy that's just 12-1 to win, and honestly, he's not had good results here. 17th last year and 12th in 2017. Those are his best results. He's kind of struggled here in the past, just withdrawing in 2013, 2014, 2015, just T59, T69, and no really solid results here in quite a while. But he just won in Mexico at the last field that we had that looked just like this. So, I mean, it's obvious why DJ is up top. He's always the most expensive. You kind of see him at this price point in every major event, and usually it doesn't get terribly popular being priced up so high unless it's like the US Open or something where he's really favorited. But here, not so much. Again, hasn't had the most success here. Should come in lower owned. He's actually been doing better than Justin Thomas recently with his strokes gained approach. Thomas has kind of fallen off a little bit, at least over the last 10 rounds. He's actually losing some strokes gained approach, but DJ's been super solid. Doesn't matter what split you look at, he's gaining about a stroke per round approach, with some pretty good consistency, and of course off the tee. This is bread and butter, but he's just another. A lot of these guys up top are going to be good examples of just well-rounded, all-around players. The only weakness he has is driving accuracy, but when there are eagles on the board to be had, Dustin Johnson is a really solid bet. I mean, anytime there's the RBC Canadian Open or something, you always got to smash Dustin Johnson there. Anywhere where there are par 5s that give up eagles, that's his jam. It actually hasn't been quite as good for him recently, I guess. He just rates out a 23rd in short par 5 scoring, does better on long par 5s. But he rates out number 1 in long par 5 scoring, and number 1 in medium length par 4 scoring as well. Now that's not going to help him as much this week, but the long par 4 scoring definitely will. Also top 20 in both par 3 splits, and should be a guy that is easily able to attack the drivable par 4, and he's known to do really well on some of those really short drivable par 4s, and he can get some eagles on the board. So while he's too expensive to be very optimal, and if you look at something I added to the research station this week, just in the odds section, you can see their true implied win percentage. So usually that would just be just 1 divided by whatever their decimal odd is for their implied percentage. But I did do an adjustment across the board, because if you add up everyone's percentages to win, it came out to like 160% because all the rake on the juice or vig or whatever. So I just adjusted it all proportionally, and his true win percentage implied by his odds would be 5.2%. Not that great of odds really for Dustin Johnson. That's probably going to be the lowest you'll see it at about any tournament, unless it's one he really struggles in, or just like a pure accuracy course or something. And with Rory being the same odds and being $600 cheaper, I think it's obvious everyone's going to go to him. His form has been a little more consistent, I guess. The only real knock on DJ right now is he finished T45 at Pebble Beach, where he had almost won the year before. So it's kind of a knock to him. I mean, he's coming off a win. He won in Europe as well, and I think it was Saudi Arabia he won. And So obviously he's just a really solid play as usual. You know, doesn't matter what split you're looking at. Really ranks out well in field rank, above 86% in every split. So he's pretty much beating 86% of the field at any given tournament, which is about what you can expect from Dustin Johnson. Just costs too much, you know. He's a guy that I've been attacking very heavily on draft.com. Anytime I get the first or second pick, I just slam in DJ. Because I know that Rory has just a better value on DraftKings. We'll probably be playing a little bit more of him, even though he's probably going to be a little chalky. Just because he obviously rates out really well here and stuff. But yeah, Dustin Johnson, that's the way I'd want to attack him here, is just getting him on other sites. Like on FanDuel, he's a better value than on DraftKings, but just by a little bit, just because it's really, really easy to... You know, actually, I take that back. You know, this week, I think, on DraftKings, they kind of made it to where it's super easy to punt, like on FanDuel. So you really can go out there and play DJ. Like, if you want to, it'd probably be a decent strategy to take like a heavy stand on one of these expensive guys that I imagine will have reduced ownership just due to all the amazing plays in the 9-8K range or so. That could be a strategy you employ, but for the most part, none of these guys up here are too mandatory. You can kind of just pick and choose who you want this week. There's a plethora of great plays out there. So Dustin Johnson, just about as good as you can ask for from a golfer. Just not the best history here, but he can still pop off wherever. And yeah, I'll be just a GPP play that you can take a stand on if you want to. He's a good golfer. Should be lower owned than usual. You've got Justin Thomas at $11,000, 12-1 on FanDuel. He's 15-1. I think this will be a week where he also gets some lower ownership. Didn't end up all that well at the Honda. Ended up T30, but he hasn't been playing as well as his finishes would lead you to. His strokes gained approach, which had been his calling card for like a year and a half, 2 years. That's kind of fallen apart recently. Just looking at things here, he lost 4 strokes approach in the second round at Honda, but then the next round he gained 3 and then lost 1.3 the next. So been a real roller coaster for him recently. He's had some rounds where he's gained a ton of strokes. We've seen him gain 5, 7.7 even. What was that? First round 4 tournaments ago, and then I've seen him gain 5 and 3, but we've also seen him lose like 2 and 4, and it's just a little bit all over the place. Hasn't been quite as steady as where you look at Dustin Johnson, and over his last 6 rounds, he's gained at least 1.7 strokes approach in all of them, and in 4 of those 6 rounds, he's gained over 3. We've seen him gain as much as like 5 strokes in a round. Recently it's just been really, really hot for him. So that's nice to see with DJ. Might be a reason to play him, sort of. But Justin Thomas has kind of fallen to the wayside in that just a little bit. Could easily bounce back. It's just gotten really inconsistent, as where before it was incredibly consistent. So I think he's still a cash game play. He's in my cash game lineup right now because I just always put him in my cash game lineup, but it's still pretty subject to change. I think in cash, most people will either start Rory or just go mid-range the whole way, like upper mid-range, make a lineup all out of the 8K, 9K guys, and that's probably the best way to go about it. But I really like Justin Thomas. He finished 3rd here in 2016, 11th last year. He rates out number 1 in DraftKings fantasy point scoring over DJ. It does rate just behind him in projected round score overall. So he just gains so many birdies. He gains 5 birdies to the field each event, which is just so good. Dustin Johnson gains only 2.9. So he really does have them beat there. And I think Thomas is a better DraftKings play than Dustin Thomas, but than Dustin Johnson. Sorry. Too many Austins, and we're about to talk about another Austin with Justin Rose coming up. But yeah, the Austins are good, and it's hard to go too wrong with either of them. Thomas, the only issue is recently we saw that approach game skid a little bit, and his putter too. His putter has skidded recently, and I don't know if it's Bermuda. He has decent Bermuda splits. They're just fine. It's I don't know, just recently over the last few about the last 3 or 4 events, he's had some really bad rounds. Like in the third round in Mexico, he lost like 5 strokes putting, and then on the final day he had gained like 3.5. So just some wild swings there. It's just some weird inconsistency that we're not used to seeing from Justin Thomas, who was, he had been one of the best with consistency all last year pretty much, winning a lot of tournaments too. And his strokes gained around the green, though, that's still really, really good. Better than all the other studs in that measure. So he's still got a lot of stuff going on for him. Implied win percentage of 4% there. Just 11,000 is just so expensive for him, but it is really easy to find a way to afford him this week, especially with some of the guys in the 6K range. And that's kind of how I ended up in cash. I just had so much money left to spend on people because I had so many great cash game plays from like the 7 and 6K range that I was just able to throw in Justin Thomas. And I think that's what I'm going to do with him, is just play him in cash and maybe fade him in, I don't know. I don't even want to fade him in GPP, though, because he's going to be lower owned. I think a lot of people are just going to go Rory in this range. I might honestly switch it up and play Rory in cash like everyone else, and then Thomas in GPP. But still deciding, still looking at this week. So looking at Rory McIlroy there, 12-1. He is, let's see here. He's still behind Dustin Johnson in odds, but just by the slightest amount here. So for $600 cheaper on DraftKings, $500 cheaper on FanDuel, I think he's going to be super popular. Just on a roll of really good finishes here. 6 last week, and that was his worst performance in 5 weeks. So, he's just been really cooking with some sauce. He has top 10 finishes in a majority of his finishes over the last year. It's some pretty astounding results there. He finishes in the top 10% of fields, 62% of the time. Just a really great number, only behind Dustin Johnson in that mark. And, Rory, Dustin Johnson, and Rose, they really stick out in that stat over everyone else. It's crazy to finish in the top 10% of fields over half the time. That's what makes the elite of the elite so elite. They're just elite. Sorry, I just heard people talking about Joe Flacco earlier. I kind of had to throw the E word around there. So Rory McIlroy, it's hard to really go too wrong with him. Rates out 4th in projected round score, projected fantasy points per round. Another guy that when par 5s are on the table, he's someone that you want to look to. He really does all his work with strokes gained off the tee. It really helped him in Mexico. He's just he really does put up solid performances here. He had 3 top 10s in a row from 2013 to 2015, and then 12th in 2016. Kind of fell off a little bit after that. 35th in 2017, and missed the cut last year at this event. Some people might be mindful of that, but still, he gained strokes in every single strokes gain category, no matter which split you're looking at. His adjusted field rank over his adjusted field rank split over his last 5 events, 96%, just beating 96% of all the golfers in any given field he tees it up at. So he's got some obvious GPP upside with a history of top 10ing here and just so many top 10s in a row rolling in. It just feels like he's just going to continue rolling on to the major season here, where he's looking to make his Grand Slam finally. So, he's pretty much, being the same odds as DJ and stuff. He's going to be, I don't know about the chalk, but he'll be higher owned than all the other studs. That is certain, especially with Tiger Woods right underneath him. $300 cheaper, and with the concerns of him withdrawing last week and stuff. So, I do see a lot of people landing on Rory, and it might be a decent spot to fade him, but he does just rate out well in everything. Even driving accuracy. He's hitting at 317 off the tee, which is longer than pretty much everyone else, but of all the guys hitting 310 or higher off the tee, he's like the only one, of the guys 315 plus off the tee, like the super long bombers, the Cameron Champs, Bull NXs of the world, those guys, he's the only one hitting over 60% driving accuracy. So I do like seeing that, the 72% greens of regulation percentage. It's just really good stuff from him. You can't really go wrong there. It's just he is going to be a chalkier option, and it could be a decent fade. I do like targeting different guys for fade, especially the cheaper guys. But he is someone that doesn't have many people around him salary wise, and will probably get some ownership due to that. And then just the odds value is very obvious and apparent for most people here. Tiger Woods, let's talk about him. Mr. Tiger, $10,500, 11-1 on FanDuel. Not a bad FanDuel price. I don't mind playing him there. This is one of his better courses. Of course, has a really good history here. Won recently in 2013, 11th last year. Just riding a tide of top 20 finishes in a row here. Stemming from his win at the Tour Championship, 10th in Mexico. So he's been really good at the events with the really strong fields. At 5 events played in Florida and Georgia over the last year, 90% field rank split, second best only behind Dustin Johnson. And if you are only behind Dustin Johnson in a stat, that means you're pretty darn good at that. Now this is a place where I think his skill set kind of rates out perfectly here. Can we talk about how his driving accuracy has just gotten better and better and better? It's so good now. So at this time last year, when we first started just recording his stats from his comeback, his driving accuracy was around 35% legitimately. And now he's raised it all the way to 68%. It's quite remarkable, honestly. His strokes gained approach is just glorious. Just absolutely glorious. It's not gone anywhere. Doing even better than Dustin Johnson in every split. Just amazing. Also his around the tee game. God, this again. I always saying around the tee, but that is a strokes gained category that only guys like I, who occasionally duff the ball, will ever have to worry about. But his strokes gained around the green, something that had been with him all last year. It was hot fire. Every time that he was chipping, I knew it was going to go like an inch from the hole or hole out. I am too lazy to look this up. I could spend 10-15 minutes looking up to see if this is true or not, but I am not going to. I am just going to guess that he had the most hole outs last year. Had like the highest hole out percentage with his chipper. It just really felt like, not only was he gaining strokes approach just constantly all year long, over 1 strokes gained approach per round on average, but it just felt like every time that he would miss the green, you were like, thank God he missed the green and he's chipping, because it's so much better than him putting long distances. I don't know. He's just always got that Tiger magic about him. Always making sure to have the Nike logo just shown on TV right before his chip-ins drop in. That could be his MO at certain places. So I love Tiger Woods. He has a neck strain, and that's sort of a concern. The initial report thought he was going to be out for just a few weeks, but it seems like he's doing what Day did and just really playing it safe before the players. Now, this guy is super rich, so I don't know if the prize pool is that much of a motivating factor. You can say that about a lot of these higher up studs, but still, the largest prize pool that golf has ever offered. That's obviously interesting for anyone, no matter who you are. And Tiger just seeks out greatness, of course, and that's Tiger for you. He was at the course, or he's already been there. I think he's going to take this one pretty seriously. He's 24-1 now. He does not rate out well as a value at all. Like, the 3 guys underneath him all have better odds to win. It's Tiger. You got to pay for Tiger, but it's Tiger. So, I think he won't be low owned. Not crazy low owned. We have seen his ownership be lower than we're used to, but it's still Tiger. Even though he withdrew just recently, it's still Tiger. He'll still get a little love. It could be around like 10% or so, and that's still interesting to me. I think I'm still going to play him. He doesn't rate out as well in fantasy scoring. So if you look at projected round score, all the guys in the top 7 on in pricing they all rank in the top 7 in fantasy scoring per hole. Projected round score. Sorry, Justin Rose, he doesn't do as well in fantasy point scoring compared to just his projected round score, but they're all top 7 projected round score except for Tiger Woods. He rates out 23rd and 29th in DraftKings scoring. Of course, the missing piece there, if you're wondering, is Fleetwood, who we'll get to in this pod for sure. But honestly, when we tee off on, we might see Fleetwood with a lower odds to win than Tiger, which would make 2 guys in the 8K range with better odds than Mr. Tiger Woods there. So I don't really know what to make of it, and they're Tiger Woods odds anyway, so they're already sweetened a little bit. So it really feels like Vegas has some concern. They don't really like him as much. He's gone from 25 to 1 to 24 to 1, so that's a little bit of a sign of life there. But we'll have to see how the if he does the Pro-Am and stuff like that. Just we're going to be looking at just how he's feeling with his neck strain, how real it was, whether it's just an excuse to get out of playing the Arnold Palmer last week, which I doubt it was. It probably was something that was actually bothering him a little bit, but if there's some news and it's kind of negative and it gets a lot of people off of him, it might honestly just intrigue me a little bit more here. I mean, this dude has made 93% of his cuts over the last year in 18 events. I mean, just really good. Just really, he just rates out so darn well. It's just he's priced up, and the uncertainty with the injury and all that. It's a shame, but I wish I could play more Tiger than I probably will end up playing. Moving on down to not Tiger Woods. We can talk about Tiger more if you want, but I'm sure everybody wants to. But we got to move on to Justin Rose here, $10,200, 20 to 1 right now, underpriced. Well priced on FanDuel, but underpriced on DraftKings. He's coming off of 2 bad performances in a row after winning the Farmers Insurance Open. He was looking fine last week at the Arnold Palmer. He was up there on the leaderboard, top of the leaderboard not on the very top, on the front page of the leaderboard on Thursday. It's just his weekend was just horrible. He was looking like he was about to win the darn thing going into Friday, and he could not have looked much worse on the weekend. If you look at the strokes gained numbers, it'll kind of tell the story. He lost 4 strokes approach on Sunday after gaining 2.5 strokes approach on Saturday and gaining almost 6 strokes approach on Thursday. So that's weird. Probably just a one-off round there. We saw a bunch of guys actually kind of struggle with their approach after having a good round on last Sunday. Like Rory lost over 4 strokes approach after gaining 5 strokes approach that Saturday, and Koepka, we also saw him lose 3 strokes approach on Sunday. What did him in on Saturday when he was gaining those strokes approach was his strokes gained around the green and putting. His short game is miserable. He lost 3 strokes in both categories, and then they went back to just being normal on Sunday. So it was the tale of 2 different rounds there, 2 absolutely completely different rounds where he was strong at one thing and horrible at another thing the next day, and then it flip-flopped the next day. He should be able to recover perfectly fine. This is a course where he has historically had some troubles. He's finished 4th year in 2014, but that's sandwiched around some missed cuts. T65 in 2017, T23 last year. I'm not really going to count 2015 as much. I know he was dealing with some back problems then as well. So, I don't like looking into that as much. And you could almost sort of say the same thing about the 2015 season for Dustin Johnson, honestly. When he finished T69 here, he was, putting the wrong things in his nose. He's a naughty boy. But, yeah, so with Rose here, obviously, he sticks out big time when he's not up with the other Austins. It's just alarming we don't see his odds under 20-1. It's got to be the first time in quite a while we've seen Justin Rose at 20-1 and not being in the teens or being in the single digits. I know the field here is insane, but it's interesting to see how much of a favorite Rory is over Justin Rose when it's really been Justin Rose having higher odds than Rory McIlroy for a whole year now in the battle of the Northern Ireland guys. And there's something really, really bizarre that happened last week. Rose was like the one guy from Northern Ireland that wasn't on the top of the leaderboard at the end of the day. You had like Rory McIlroy and Matt Wallace and Fitzpatrick and who else? There's Ian Poulter. There's another one. Who was it? Oh, Fleetwood, obviously. Like last week, if you look at the top of the leaderboard, Americans got wrecked. I mean, it was all the Northern Ireland guys and then a bunch of South Koreans too, just finishing at the top of the leaderboard there. But Justin Rose was the one Northern Ireland guy that just could not get it done, and he was looking like he was going to be right in the mix with all those other Irishmen. But actually, I'm not sure if you can call the guys from Northern Ireland Irishmen. I mean, I think so, but I'm not sure. I'm not very European at all, but someone correct me on that later in Slack if you're listening. So yeah, Rose, he had 2 bad rounds last week, 2 pretty darn bad rounds, and we also, like I mentioned earlier, his fantasy point scoring rates out 23rd in DraftKings scoring, but 7th in projected round score. Of course, that is a lot better on FanDuel, where he rates 14th in projected fantasy point scoring and 7th in projected round score. Well, it's going to be the same on either site there, but he is a much better play on FanDuel, but he is priced up more on FanDuel as well, or at least priced where he really ought to be. The price is nice on DraftKings. There's, I guess, some room for concern here, because it didn't really look good last week, and he finished in the bottom half of the field despite making the cut, just with how it was with the Invitational there, but still second in the field in birdies gained, and number 1 in the field in fantasy points gained to the field. So, and also of all the studs, he is number 1 in double bogey avoidance, or double bogey or worse avoidance. You've also got Dustin Johnson rating out pretty well in that stat, but everyone else is over like 2% in the stud area. Justin Rose only double bogeys at a 1.3% clip, so that's really nice. Finishes in the top 10% of fields 58% of the time. Just looking at his strokes gained stuff, I kind of talked about what he did last week, but just overall, gets it done in every single category. The putting's just kind of like neutral right now, but he does putt better on Bermudas. And his approach game has just fallen off a little bit compared to it was. He's gaining 0.2 strokes per round over his last 10, 0.3 over his last 25, but 0.5 over his last 50 rounds. So kind of going the wrong direction there. And he's got some new irons that he's still working with. I mean, he immediately won with them at the Farmers Insurance Open. There might still be some growing pains with that. I don't want to think too much about that, but just something to throw in there to consider. So I think his price is great. I kind of hope that he has a subpar performance, and I can really hammer him at the Masters. That's kind of been my plan all year long, is just to hope that Rose struggles a little tiny bit somehow, if that's even possible for him, and then I can just go ham on him at the Masters, where he's always underpriced for how crazy good he is there. And yeah, this week is it does feel like a really good spot to use him. I think a lot of people will use him if they don't want to go up to Rory. It's just we're not used to seeing him this cheap. But I would say if you're playing both DraftKings and FanDuel, I would play a lot more of him over there on FanDuel. He's going to have lower ownership, and he just scores better with their scoring rules. And down at $10,000 here to finish off this section of the podcast here, giving you free guys almost an hour. Really going here. Brooks Koepka is $10,000, 11.5 on FanDuel. Just missed the cut last week after almost winning the Honda Classic. Just looking at where he struggled last week, and it was his strokes gained approach. Just not looking great. Lost 3.5 strokes approach on Friday, and that's something that had been really consistent for him going into this tournament. So it's kind of surprising to see him struggle there. He was putting fine. Everything else was fine. He just lost strokes approach, which was a little bit alarming. But before then, over his previous 18 rounds before his last week, he had no rounds where he lost more than the stroke per in one round, and the overwhelming majority of them were rounds regained. Especially, he really liked to has so many rounds, 5 or 6 rounds in there, he gained 2 or 3 strokes approach. That's more of what we're used to seeing from Brooks. He's had some success here over the last few years. 11th last year, 16th in 2017. I think he's still priced up a little bit, but his odds are right there with Rose. I mean, I think Vegas likes him maybe a little bit more than I do. I do like playing guys that are coming off of a missed cut. Don't get me wrong. I just wasn't really huge about Koepka coming in. But I think I will probably... I'm kind of leaning towards playing Koepka on DraftKings over Rose in some spots. GPP only, because he does like to double bogey and stuff like that. But he rates 6th in projected DraftKings fantasy point scoring per round, and he's a guy that's helped out by DraftKings scoring system. Just kind of a rule of thumb: the more a guy double bogeys and bogeys, but especially double bogeying, that's going to lead to you scoring better on DraftKings and FanDuel, and vice versa. So, Koepka, it's not really a great price for him considering the value you can get on a lot of other guys. He's like Molinari's odds to win right now for like $1,400 more expensive. So that's kind of the name of the game this week with the expensive studs. It's just that you see it all the time in the majors. Just the 9 and 8K range is just so chock full of way more value that it really makes it hard to play these guys like you normally would. And their ownerships are not going to break 20% on pretty much all of these guys. Maybe Rory. That's about it. Koepka, we're talking like single-digit ownership for Koepka. And that's kind of where he's been over the last few weeks. As of just last few times he's played, he's just been the stud with the lowest ownership up there. And paid off at Honda for sure, but so far, other than that, he hasn't done a whole lot. But I know that Koepka's capable of a whole lot. Obviously, he's good in strong fields, especially at majors and major type events. So Koepka, just a GPP play to consider. So that'll do it for the free section of this podcast. Gave you guys almost an hour with the nature of the events, so y'all are welcome for that. And if you want to check out the deep dive into the rest of the field, you can check us out at dfsarmy.com. Use promo code TACO for a lifetime 20% off discount, and again, you'll get access to our Domination Station lineup optimizer, the Research Station, which just a lot of cool tools and features for you to use on there, and of course get access to all of our other daily fantasy sport offerings. dfsarmy.com, promo code TACO. Alright, I will be back in a little bit for you VIP guys. For the rest of you guys, peace out until next week. Good luck at Sawgrass.
Hey guys, are you looking for a sportsbook that you can trust? Well, look no further than mybookie.ag, where you can get a 50% match on your initial deposit of up to $1,000 when you use promo code DFSArmy. As a bonus, when you use promo code DFS Army, you also get a free month of DFS Army VIP and DFS Army Beat the Bookie membership. That's a $100 combined value. So we'll help you with your daily fantasy sports and we'll help you with your handicapping. Free when you sign up for mybookie.ag using promo code DFS Army.